Welcome and good evening. Just so people are aware, my name is Ted Kenny. I'm the chair of the Select Board. This is not a Select Board meeting. It is a informational meeting, so there's not going to be an agenda or anything like that from a Select Board perspective. But I'm going to turn it over to Town Manager Eric Wells, who is going to moderate the presentation. I do want to also talk about just name the other people who are going to be speaking. John Himmelgarn is going to be giving some information tonight. He was the architect. Also, Mark I messed it up already. Mark, his name's Mark, and he's the next architect. Apparently, John's retiring or some such. Has already retired and yet is here. Our library director, Kevin Unrath, and we also, just for introductory purposes, we have three library trustees who are elected officials. One, Carla Carsons, Charity Clark, and Diane Downer. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Eric. So thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Great to see you here this evening. It's a little warm outside, so coming here for the air conditioning and this presentation. Appreciate you coming out this evening. We'll go through the presentation this evening. First, we have slides up here. They're also on the town website. We have a QR code that's posted on the door and out front on the tables. If you want to scan that QR code, you'll have access to the presentation. I know it can be hard to see on the screen sometimes here, especially the design. We have it on a big board out there, but we also have it online too. So that's easier to see the details if you want to look at that as opposed to trying to see them on the screen here. So there's a lot of items in detail to see. So here we go. So I'll kind of go through what we're doing tonight. Thanks to Chairman Kenny for introducing our panel that will be going through the project that's proposed here. This is a special town meeting. This evening is the public information hearing, and tomorrow voting by Australian ballot from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Williston Armory. This is an opportunity to ask questions. We're going to give a project overview presentation, similar to what we gave at town meeting day. There'll be the ability of everyone here to ask questions about the project. If you could please save those to the end of our presentation. We'll make sure all your questions are answered. Before you vote, make sure any questions you have before you decide how you would like to vote, those are answered for you. So the article under consideration at the special town meeting is to reconsider the approval of Article 6 as lastly voted on March 3rd, 2026. Shall voters authorize renovation and expansion of the Dorothy Allen Memorial Library and associate improvements to the village green and issuance of general obligation bonds or notes of the town in an amount not to exceed $13.9 million, subject to reduction by grants and aid and funds then available to the town to pay the capital costs and related other costs of the project. So we tried to share this a lot leading up to this, but this is a reconsideration vote for the bond that was approved at town meeting day. So a yes vote supports reconsideration of Article 6. That would overturn the original result. It would reconsider it and reject the authorization to issue a bond for the library and village green project. A no vote at the special town meeting defeats the reconsideration of Article 6 that authorizes the town to proceed with issuance of the bond as approved at town meeting this past March. Nothing would change from the original approval. And then in addition, for reconsideration article to pass, and this is how state law outlines this, the number of votes in favor of reconsideration, a yes vote, needs to be at least 2/3 of the number of votes that were in favor of the original bond article on town meeting day. And there's a lot there. So really to take away, the minimum number of majority votes needed to approve reconsideration is 842 yes votes. That's the floor. So what we'll cover this evening, we'll go through the project need and key statistics that are associated with that. We'll talk about how we got here, project development since 2022. You'll hear about our project design and scope that's been proposed and developed. We'll talk about the project budget and the bond article, and we'll also hear about the capital campaign for this project. So I'll talk about how we got here first. So this is a project that's been in development since 2022. The town set up a scoping committee to explore the library and the community center in town. 3 pathways were explored by that committee. The charge was developed by the select board, and those members were appointed by the select board. Those 3 pathways were a new combined community center and library, two new separate facilities, and a renovated, expanded library and separate community recreation center. So in 2023, that group really got started and did a community survey. You might recall the Williston Community Spaces Survey. We did it in two phases. There was in-person discussions, kind of a qualitative discussion with folks around town at many events to hear what their thoughts were about those facilities and future space needs in the town. And then there was a second phase. We had an online written survey to get feedback from folks as well to help inform this design and this process. So after the scoping study was finished, the recommendation by the committee was to renovate and expand the library in the village and to explore a site for a community center in our growth center, that area around Taft Corners in town. So then in 2024, a schematic design committee was then stood up by the elected library board of trustees. That committee was tasked with working with our professional team to develop the schematic design for the library. That group held public meetings, and the committee was made up of library trustees, friends of the library, community members, a member from the Williston Historical Society as well. Our professional team supporting that work included our architects from Black River Design, engineers that they work with, professional estimators, a landscape architect from Bowman, and a library consultant specializing in this work. The scoping study and the schematic design were funded with federal ARPA funds that the town had received, not local funds for the project development. And during that process, a decision was made to also look at the scope of this project to include the village green to refresh the space for community use at the same time the library was being looked at. That takes us to last year, 2025. The schematic design was finalized by the committee and the project estimate, and it was transmitted to the library board of trustees who approved it and transmitted to the select board. We worked with a fundraising consultant to study and advise on a potential capital campaign for this project. It was determined about a $1.5 million fundraising goal was viable to look at. There were then several joint discussions between the Williston Select Board and the library trustees around project scope, costs, and potential next steps. And then last fall, the Select Board passed a motion to add to the town meeting warning this past town meeting day a bond article for the project. The bond vote was held this past town meeting on March 3rd. It was approved by a narrow margin, 47 votes. There's a reconsideration petition that was received and under the 30-day deadline with more than 5% of registered voters on that petition. And that required the select board to call a special town meeting for tomorrow to reconsider that bond approval at town meeting. So that gets us to tonight. So I will hand it over to our director of Dorothy Allen Memorial Library, Kevin Unrath, to get into more of the project details.
Thanks, Town Manager. So first of all, the project needs statement. These were the needs that the trustees were looking at and came up with in terms of why this project has been developed. First of all, there was a need because the library has outgrown its space. The original building was opened in December of '59, and there's been 2 additions in '86 and '98. And so it's been a little over the average amount of time since we've expanded the library, and the library collection and services grow as the town grows. There was also a need to find space for people of different generations. An example of this is right now our children and our young adults are right next to each other in the same space. I have a 9-year-old and a 16-year-old, and they want to be as far apart as possible. Also space for adults and then seniors, or I like to call them power users. We looked at the need to try to revitalize the village green to bring the community together. So having accessible paths, having a place where the town band and other groups could have a performance if they wanted to. There was also a need to make sure that we had a lot of public input. Eric went over the various ways that public input was gathered, but we wanted to make sure that this wasn't a plan that was thrown together behind closed doors, but that was rather developed in a series of open meetings over years. And finally, a way to pay for it. And that was the fundraising we're working on, utilizing some town funds, and then the bond vote that was passed and that's now being reconsidered. I just want to share some statistics behind that first need about the library growing. Our population since the last edition has grown 50%. Visits to the library have increased 92%. An example of this, last year we checked out 56,000 children's books in 2025. There's still a great demand for print books. I certainly don't want to read to my kids on a computer. If you look at average-sized towns in Vermont, our library, similar-sized towns, I should say, ranks #1 in program attendance, #2 in circulation of materials. That's either print materials or print and electronic materials, but is #8 in terms of the building size. So those are just some statistics that led us to look at expanding. I want to talk a little bit about the Village Green and the design. The architects will be up here as well to talk to this. But the goal, after it was determined that citizens of Williston wanted the library to remain here in the village, was to minimize the impact on the Village Green. The design is meant to blend in with the current library, with the central school where we are, with the Village Green and the surrounding. One way that was done was locating the building in back of the current library. There were 3 different ways that the schematic design committee looked at putting a building in, and this was the least disruptive in terms of both the view from Williston Road and in terms of the amount of green that would be taken up. Another design feature is using the red brick and the white clapboard that you see in the current library and also in other areas of the historic village. And finally, varying the roof line, the building footprint to make a building with nooks and crannies and keeping that interior courtyard. This is a site plan. The current building is outlined in red. The addition would be in the blue, and then the parking is behind it. And you'll see the parking along Library Lane has been removed. So that's an overview of both where the current building is and what would be developed. And then you can see over to the side some of the paths and then the outdoor performance area that would be added to the Village Green space. This slide shows you a view of what the addition would look like from about where the statue of Governor Chittenden is, if you know that green area. You can see the addition is 2 stories, and over there on the left, and there's the path coming through back to where the parking would be, and then the green is where the trees are in the foreground on that picture. And then, next slide. And then this is a view of, from down Library Lane, from about where our flagpole is now. I do want to point out in the original deed that Frank Ailing gave when he left this library in honor of his wife, he said that we needed to have a sign on the exterior of the building that said it was the Dorothy P. Ailing Memorial Library, or else it would revert to the original owner. So we're going to put the P in there to make sure that we're complying with that gift that was given so long ago. But as you can see, this is the 2-story building. You can see it's clad in the brick, and then the current library entrance is to the left of where this person with the backpack is. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our project architects to talk a little bit about some more about the exterior and then a lot about the interior plans that are there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. You said I was going to speak a lot about this, but I'm not. I'm going to speak about it, but I hope to not spend too many words on this. I think that you've hit almost all the high spots there. If I look at this plan, here's the original brick building right down here. So Williston Road is along this way in a parallel out here, and the current entrance is right there. So that view that you just had was looking down past here to where that piece of signage was on the building there. And beyond that then is the entrance to the school right up here. Again, this plan is such that the new portion, which is this more or less rectangle, is set down about a half a level from the existing building, much like the current building is set down about a half a floor from the original building. And that allows us to follow the grade of the green without changing the grading there very much. We are then able to come in at grade from the parking lot up here into an enlarged lobby over what's there now. If you use the library at all, you know that that gets pretty congested pretty fast as soon as you have about 3 people in there. The circulation desk is here. There's half a set of stairs that goes up to this is where the current adult collection is. What we've got happening in this corner of the new plan are a much larger community space than what is there now. For some of the larger programs, it's actually divisible into 2, so you could have 2 programs happening at once. It's also such that you'll be able to close off the building right here, close off the rest of the library from that, and as well as the doors here. And this portion of the building will be able to serve the public after hours when the library isn't necessarily open. It's got some restrooms itself, it's got proper means of egress out, and it will be able to kind of stand on its own. These are the administrative offices and whatnot back there. We've added this little connector gallery at the edge of the courtyard, much like the one you have here, which allows people with children to actually come in and not have to circulate all the way through the building to get the children's room, but be able to come up that half a set of stairs and across, and you're there. The last piece then is that you come up this half a set of stairs and you go up a slightly longer stair, and you end up on the 2nd floor, and this is where the new adult collection is up here. Along with these kind of lavender rooms are meeting rooms, small conference rooms that can be used by the public whenever the library is open. And you know, Kevin spoke about some of the nooks and crannies, and I'll just say that that was another of the things we heard throughout that whole public process of gathering data, was they like kind of the small corners in this building. It feels very much like home. And so and I think you saw out on well, we'll show you an image here in a moment of some of these dormers that are up here where the ceiling will be a little bit lower. You can kind of hide out in there with a little chair and on your own. And at the same time, then there's a bigger space here where it's going to feel a little more open, like a library is going to feel like there's a little more substance to it. Otherwise, we tried to keep the layout of what's down here currently more or less how it is to keep renovation costs down. The current meeting program area is down there. That becomes the wiggle room. And if you want to know more about that, Kevin will be back up here in a few minutes. Again, the expanded children's area. Young adults, as Kevin was mentioning, are now separated from the kids here. They're also separated by a half a floor from the folks up here that may not appreciate the young adults any more than the young adults appreciate the younger kids. There's a secondary administrative space here where the current circulation desk is, just to be able to maintain some level of oversight in all these other spaces. Without getting into every single space on this plan, I think that's a pretty good overview of that floor plan. So there is a view of that open space that I talked about on the inside, where there's a little bit more glass happening in some seating areas, and then you can see the bulk of the book stacks. And kind of on the other side of this bookshelf, as you go down that little aisle there, is where all those dormers are. And there you can see the dormers. We try to keep the scale of the windows similar to what is in the building now, material the same. This, of course, is the side of the building that's facing towards the green, and so it's really going to feel very much like part of that context that's already there. And then over here, where you get a better sense of a taller 2-story space, is over there opposite where the school is, where you also have this space right here. It's got a very tall brick wall just on the other side, right over there. And again, the parking is here. It's as I think, hidden as we can get it. At the same time, can you go back to the site plan? There we go. So with the parking back here, this actually gives you some parking access to the green, as well as a little bit of overflow parking up here for the old schoolhouse that's there. And I think that is going to make this green much more accessible to everyone, and probably open this up to some more options for events. And I won't even want to try to surmise what those might be. But I think it's just going to make it that much more usable community space. And you saw by that the other image across the green was that the sidewalk here is going to let you, as you approach, kind of get off of Williston Road and through the green to come into the front door when you're a pedestrian. So I think that's, what else we have here? Yeah, again, just a couple of spaces. I think these pictures are out in the lobby as well. This is the circulation desk with some spots for a little bit of gathering spaces for folks. You can see here, there's that short set of stairs that goes up to what's currently the adult collection space, but is going to be for the young adults. So, and I'm going to turn this over to Mark because I'm done talking.
Thank you. So the project timeline for the project, should it move forward after tomorrow's vote, is such that we will spend most of the next year working on completing the design and putting together the drawings for the contractor to build from. And so in about a year from now, a little bit less, those drawings will be done. At that point, we will go out to bid, and hopefully in a year from now, we will start construction. One of the goals for this project is to keep the library open throughout construction, and so the plan is to phase the construction into 2 phases. The first phase will last about a year, and so that will be the new addition in the grounds, the parking lot out back. And so when that phase is complete in roughly May, June of next year, phase 2 will begin, and the first thing that will happen is the existing library will be moved into the new addition, and at that point, the contractors will go into the existing building and they will start renovating that. And the plan is that by winter of 2029, hopefully sooner if possible, the renovations for the existing building are done, and then the entire building is occupied at that point.
I would say when it says winter of 2029, that's like the January part.
Yes, thank you.
2029, not the December part.
Yep.
All right, so I'm back up for looking at the financials of this project. So provide a few overviews here of how we designed the funding structure here. So it's just under a $14.5 million project overall, and that breaks up into these different components in our project budget. About $6.5 million is the estimate for the construction of the building addition. Just under $3 million to renovate the existing building, including energy efficiency upgrades. Then a little $1.4 million in a number of things: furnishings, professional fees, permitting, and other soft costs for the project work. $1.7 million for site work, traffic safety, and stormwater mitigation. $900,000 for the village green improvements, including accessible walkways and outdoor performance space we highlighted. And we leave a contingency in here as well, $1.2 million in funds to prevent budget overruns. So overall, the funding structure for this project, it's looking for approval of $13.9 million in debt through the sale of public bonds. This debt need is bought down with the fundraising we'll chat about with the capital campaign. The amount of bonds we would need to sell is lower by the amount of pledges for and funding for the capital campaign that we would need to sell. Before town meeting day, the Williston Select Board allocated $550,000 of existing town funds for the project. That lowered that amount of money for the bond authorization. So that's why it's not the full $14.5 million for the project. It's 13.9. And then again, that number is brought down by the fundraising effort, and the capital campaign's raised over $750,000 to date for this project, and Carla will chat a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So overall with the project financing, we're anticipating to sell these municipal bonds in 2 series. The first would be prior to the addition, so in summer of 2027. And then again, prior to the renovation, summer of 2028. And the thought behind that is that first bond's gonna be larger than the second bond. We're not gonna spend all that money on construction at once, so we don't need to be holding that and paying interest on it. We're not gonna spend it till the second phase of the project. So we look to sell those bonds in 2 series, work for the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. The bond bank works to pool public debt for municipalities and school districts in the state, and pools that public debt to sell it on the exchange, New York Stock Exchange. Stock and bond exchange. So we work with them. We've used them for financing projects for many years in town here. The bond interest rate is determined at the time of the bond sale. We're probably looking at a 20 to 25-year term for the bonds to mature. We modeled this working with the bond banks. We don't know what that rate will be till the bonds are sold, but we've used just under 4.25% in modeling as the bond bank helped guide us through coming up with a cost estimate here the best we could. For the energy efficiency components of the project, there's a product through the Vermont Bond Bank that has an energy efficiency loan. This has a fixed 2.1% interest rate and is a 10-year note. We would use that to cover the energy efficiency items for both phases of the project and borrow that money in 2 chunks to correspond with the phases of the project. So overall, looking at 4 different debt instruments here, strategically spacing them for timing and spacing the type of debt instrument we're using for the best interest rate we can get for public funds here. So property tax impact. Our debt payment on this project will begin in fiscal year 2028. So that's the fiscal year that starts July 1st, 27 and ends June 30th, 2028. We estimate these numbers, assuming nothing is raised through the capital campaign. And we'll hear more about that in a minute. We're estimating the debt payment on property taxes if we sold the full $13.9 million in bonds. And again, the current pledges with those funds, they would buy it down to about $13.15 million to sell in bonds. So our estimate is about $40 per $100,000 of assessed property value per year, property tax impact with this estimate and this structure. That's about $120 per year for a median assessed home at $300,000, about $10 per month. This per year cost will decrease as the bonds and notes are paid off and the interest goes down year to year. And then I get this question a lot. A reminder, the property value assessment is different than the property appraisal. The assessment is what the town bases the value for property taxes on. The assessed value of your property divided by $100, then multiplied by the tax rate is your municipal property tax. We use the median assessed home value to illustrate that. So that's the 50th percentile of assessed homes. So half of the assessed homes in towns are lower than that, and half are graduated larger than that. So I will turn it over to Carla now for an update on the capital campaign.
Hello. During our conversations, our monthly meetings with the trustees, we had, this was part of the agenda as we were going through this whole process with the design committee and looking at the different changes that were going on with the renovation and the new design, and also being aware of the costs. And so very early on, we recognized that having some private funding would be important to this project. And using the consultant, the capital campaign consultant was really good. She told us that there was a possibility that we could actually raise some funds. And so as soon as the select board gave us the okay that they were going to put this on the agenda for a town meeting, we gathered a wonderful group of people that have been working very hard to raise money for this project. And this is considered our quiet phase. And if the project continues, then we will go with a little bit more public phase and have some other kind of ways, kind of lower price points for people in the community to be able to get involved and to be a part of this process. I mean, I think one of the things that's happening with this library and with the conversation, all the people that have been showing up and all the people that have been, interested in this library, is that there are a lot of people that believe in this library and are willing to support it by, giving a contribution and want to support it by giving a contribution, aside from the tax that's going to be part of all of our future here. So I'm happy to say that we have raised over $750,000 because we get surprise donations from people in the community every day, including today. And so that's something that we're committed to, and that would go through the end of this year, correct? Yeah, the end of this year. And so we're really committed to working hard in order to get that goal, 1.5 million and maybe more. So we're doing our part too. Thank you.
that was our last slide. Yes. So that was our last. I need to talk in front of the microphone here. So that was our last slide. We'll open it up for questions. We've got a microphone down there. If folks want to, if you have a question, I think we just need to turn it on if whoever the first person is to hold the button right there. We will do our best to answer your question. We want to make sure if you have a question, we can do our best to answer it. We may not be able to answer it, and we can get the answer to you tomorrow morning if we can't do it on the spot right here, if we have to look something up. But I'm here and our team is here. We'll see who is best to answer the question if there are questions. So we'll open it up for questions. All right. Feel free to step up to the microphone, and maybe the easiest thing to do, folks, if we could have a line of folks who want to speak as well, or just kind of see when there's availability there, and we can just keep the questions coming. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm looking for an elevator in the library. I assume there will be one?
Yes, it will have an elevator to reach the second floor.
Yeah, that half set of stairs is
Yep.
a big barrier.
Yep,
sometimes.
absolutely, we'll have that.
Okay.
Hi, I'm kind of curious what the contingency plan is, if any, and like, is there a stripped-down version of the new library in case this doesn't work? And what is the process moving forward if the no's do not prevail tomorrow and the yeses prevail?
Sure, yeah, so if there's reconsideration for the bond vote, the committee and the trustees and the select board look to put this to the voters for this project. If there's, this project's not supported, the elected officials will reconvene to discuss what the options are moving forward. And those options could be, taking a pause, tasking our design committee with a new target for a scope and funding, or having this same bond revoted again in the future. But the elected officials haven't had that conversation yet. That would be up to them to have that conversation and make that decision.
All right, so to the architects, is this the plan, or is there a backup or something like that, or a different layout that's been worked out, or? No, okay.
We worked very hard over, here, can everybody hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
We worked very hard over those 2 years that Eric was describing to really right-size this project to meet the needs as determined by the library consultant and the staff and the public input that we got. And this is a direct response to what we heard. And so this is the plan. We, of course, anybody that was on that committee knows, and I probably mentioned, that be careful how much this costs, like every meeting. And so, we were, I think, very, very cost conscious moving ahead. We weren't trying to overbuild this. So we were taking our cues from the committee and the library folks as to how big this could be and what it needed to do to meet the needs as given to us. So there's no other plan that we've got.
So if it doesn't work out tomorrow, it's back to the drawing board, kind of, or?
I wouldn't say completely. If the direction from the elected officials was to come up with a revised scope of project, then the work would be to work from what was created for this proposal and look at ways to scale that down or make adjustments to it based on that direction from the elected officials.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. I must admit the presentation was very impressive. I don't think anybody would see this presentation and say that it's not impressive. It's very well done. I think the biggest, everybody I talked to has the same concern. It's just a lot of money. $14 million for a library project is huge. And, Vermont's in a very difficult financial situation right now. As I mentioned, the 40%, tax increase we've seen in the past 5 years is huge. The governor's done a tax buy down in 2025. He's going to have to do it again in 2026 because he knows Vermonters can't handle the 12% increase in taxes. It's a lot of money, and it's really kind of stepping outside the area of an actual library. The conference rooms, places for kids to hang out. You got a school right next door. I've heard there's going to be programs there for like laser printers and cutting machines and stuff. That means you have to hire additional staff that are going to be trained to do that. They added insurance for that also. I mean, there's a lot of things that it's just a lot of money. It really is what it comes down to. I think everybody's for renovating the library. It does need some work, obviously. It's a little outdated, but to be honest, $14 million is just Way, way too much money. You know, it's like I mentioned before, 29 houses you can buy in Williston for $500,000 for the same amount of money that you can build one library project. It's just a lot of money. It's just what, and as Governor Phil Scott's mentioned, we have a really serious problem in Vermont. More people are leaving than coming. More people are dying than births. And the tax buy down that he did last year is going to come and get us this year. The tax buy down this year will come and get us next year. So we just can't keep having a 10 or 8 to 12% tax increase every year because it's just not affordable for Vermonters. You want to attract young families that want to have children, they're not going to come. They're not coming to Vermont. When I did the petition, and I talked to everybody that came sign the petition, lots of younger people said the same exact thing. They moved to Vermont, thought it was great, but now they're taxed out of it. They just can't afford to stay here anymore. Same thing with a lot of seniors, a lot of retired people. They just can't afford to live here. They have to leave. And I think that's very unfortunate. Everybody loves a library. I love the library. Who doesn't? You know, it's a great place to go to. Everybody loves it. I like to read as well, but it's just too much money. $14 million is a massive amount of money for a project for a library. I know South Burlington has built a very impressive library, and I don't know if it's a competitive thing, a vanity project, where you have to beat them or match them, but it's too much. And the population of Vermont itself and Williston has actually decreased since 2020. We get a 70% capacity in our schools. It's dwindling. We have less children enrolling in schools. You know, we've got a big issue here with financial ability to actually afford to live in Vermont, and it's not happening, unfortunately. And I like to see Vermont prosper just as much as everybody else. And of course, everybody saw the Williston Observer. Now you're looking at Global Foundries is looking to find another buyer. And if they leave the area, it's going to be devastating to Vermont. So we have to think about where we're spending our money, not just now, but in the future as well. But besides that, I love the plan. If it was a lot cheaper, I'd be like, go for it. But 14 million is just a lot of money for that. It's an expensive project. It really is. But it is nice. It's very impressive. I like it. It's just, I don't want to pay for it. It's too much. That's it.
Thank you.
My comment is on the same line as his. When you see the operating budget for the current library is around $1 million a year, how much will the new addition and all the expenses for elevator inspections, fire inspections, additional people and stuff cause the budget to increase next year and over previous years? So I would expect to see a good increase there.
Sure. Yeah, we looked at that. I'll turn to our director to answer your question. There's a microphone down there too, Kevin, at the seat. Or you come up with.
So we looked at it and we think it's going to be about 9%. When I was the director in Shelburne, we doubled the size of the library there. And I looked at the operating budget before and after as well. It was under 10%. That's not taking into account, of course, the cost of living increase or any inflation. But after inflation, we think it's around 10%. If you go to willistonlibraryproject.org and look at the FAQs, you can see a detailed breakdown of how that number is calculated.
Oh, okay.
So it's not going to be nothing,
Right.
but we think it's going to be around 10% more. Most of that's staff.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Young man.
What's the wiggle space?
Good question. That is a toddler space for young people that are just learning to move and wiggle. Did I describe that okay?
We also call it a free literacy
Hi. So I'm not going to go over the data because I've been over the data. Kevin said it all. We know that the demand is there, the library is being used, and it's outgrown the space. What I do want to talk about is how the library can save you money and probably offset the cost of how your taxes will go up. I knew that the library had a library of things, but this weekend I had an emergent need for a cornhole set, and it was checked out, but they had it, I think, in Richmond. But then I discovered that the library, if you're having a party and you need to make a cake that's a weird shape, they have the pan. If you need to check it, how much moisture is in your firewood, they have a meter for that. If you need to test like the energy usage of an appliance, the library has that. They have tons of stuff that if people know about it, they can use it, and that's money saving. Libraries are much more than just books now, we know that, but just in books alone, my daughter and I have checked out 19, I think, in less than 2 years, and so we're probably saving $500 to $600. We probably saved $500 to $600 in cost of books, and we're not heavy library users because we read like 5 books at once, and we want to keep them, and it takes us months, so we're not even heavy users. And having the extra space for the kids. My daughter, and I think they're going to talk about it, did the Intergen Book Club last year, and I was part of that too. And those groups are smashed together. And Violet didn't do it this year because they couldn't focus on, you can also say it. And so my point being, in the museum passes, they have museum passes. I mean, that's $100 that you're probably saving if you take the family to a museum. If people are using the library for all of these things, that cost is going to be offset. And just in full transparency, I am part of the Capital Campaign Committee, and the process with which they undertook to get to this point has been thoughtful and thorough, and they listened to the citizens of Williston, and this isn't a competition project, it's not Taj Mahal, it's none of those things. It's Williston has outgrown the library and needs this new space. Thank you. You want me to- No, I didn't. Go ahead.
Okay, wait, so I don't say my name?
You can say your name.
Hi, I'm Violet. I just wanted to talk about like what the library means to me, and I think like what it means to a lot of other kids my age.
Okay, sorry.
I don't
Where we went first.
Oh, yeah. So we moved here a few years ago, and my family and I was driving with my mom down, and we got here before my other family, and like we were excited to see the library, and we were going to go to our house, but then we saw the library, and we went to the library first, and like the first thing that what do I say?
You say whatever you want. You have it. You wrote it.
And like immediately when we walked in, we were just welcomed, and like it was just like, and they were just like happy. So like my mom was saying, I did the intergenerational book club there last year, and I didn't do it this year because for one, I got busier with like other activities and stuff, but also there was just not like enough space, and we would eat our lunch in there and talk about the book, and all these groups are crammed together in like limited spaces, and it was just like hard to focus on what you were doing because like you would have friends in a different room that was like right next to you, and it was like distracting. I would also I also want to point out how kind the Dorothy Young Memorial Library staff is, and how they deserve more space, and they deserve and how I'm sorry. And they work really hard with like limited room and resources. And the library is supposed to be a safe space for all, but for some it can obviously be too small or cramped in some spaces. And thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking on crutches, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to follow that, but let's do our best. My name is Stu Shearer. I'm a homeowner in Williston and the father of 2 children who use the library. I also run 2 community programs at the library, the Adult RPG program and the Elementary D&D program. Both of my programs routinely fill up. And through my programs, I've had the chance to see the shortcomings of the current building firsthand. Due to space issues, my Adult RPG event has to meet in the Vermont room, where we're cramped around a table that's too small. The room can also get very stuffy. At the beginning of April, when temperatures were still low enough for me to be nagging my kids to wear their coats, adult participants were showing up in shorts because of how hot the room gets when it's full of people. Despite continued demand, my elementary D&D program has to go on hiatus the past several summers due to lack of space. As much as some might want it to be, Williston is not a small, quaint town anymore, and a small library isn't good enough. I know there are also some who are worried about rising costs, and I'm one of them. My household runs on a tight budget, and recent cost increases have been a challenge. That being said, stopping the library expansion will not stop rising costs. Projects like this, in reality, are a small part of the overall town budget. The current affordability crisis is a result of ongoing failures in Montpelier and the chaos and corruption in Washington. Stopping the library expansion would be like throwing pebbles to stop a flood. All it will accomplish is keeping our town from enjoying the benefits of a fully supported community resource. And resources like that are what we need most when the world is as unpredictable as it is today. I don't know what the future will bring. I don't know what sorts of compromises or cutbacks I might need to make to keep my bills paid and a roof over my family's head. What I do know is that the library expansion will ensure that I and so many other Williston residents have more books, more media, more programs, and more opportunities to keep our lives enriched, even if we have to make sacrifices elsewhere. I've already voted no, and I hope those still deciding will do the same tomorrow at the Armory. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just take this off the stand?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a little tall. It's going to be a lot of bending over if I try. Hey, folks. So one of the things I want to bring up, and this is kind of maybe a little too future-facing, but one of the things I think we've all noticed about housing in the area, and especially as we build higher density housing, which is typically what happens as society grows, and especially being this close to town borders, we're not going to have huge lots anymore. The houses and the incoming folks that are going to be coming into our community, they're going to have smaller and smaller footprints in their home. There's going to be a lot more people overlapping on a lot less space. So building these community spaces, especially places that have creative centers, crafting centers, make sure that people that come in, you know, the new grads that going to the new houses over at the annex, the condominiums, the townhomes, the people that won't have the space to do things, be creative, express themselves, find new joys, they're not going to be able to do that in their homes anymore. This is not going to be, you know, a town where you have a huge backyard and you have a few acres where no one's going to bother you. If you want to take up blacksmithing, you can do it. That's not really going to be viable for a lot of people moving forward. So having these spaces, A, it's going to be great for adults, but then B, and this is the thing that really gets me, is this is important for the kids and the young adults. So there's a topic that's called third spaces. There are the spaces outside of your home and outside of your work and education. It's the space where you're supposed to socialize and be a part of a community. And for kids and young adults, free public spaces are dwindling, and they are dwindling fast. Now, we have an amazing park. Like, that park is fantastic. But we live in Vermont. That park is not usable half the year. And this really solves a question for where do young adults go outside of the house to be with people in real life? Because I think we can all agree kids need less time online, they need less time in front of screens, and they need to be with people their own age in a space that they feel safe, where they can develop their individualization and become the adults that they are looking to be outside of their home, outside of their parents. So building these spaces is really going to be vital to making sure that the next generation can be the people on their own, that they aren't going to be attached to screens, that they're going to develop great social habits and really learn to be a part of a community. And I think that's what we can all agree is very important.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, my name is Ezra. I was wondering about how much multimedia we'd have.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have our director do his best to answer that and see what our collection looks like.
Thanks for your question, Ezra. Can I ask, do you mean multimedia that you can consume or watch, or do you mean multimedia that you can make, or both?
Both. I
Thank
want
you.
to do both. I'm a kid, and I want to have more choices.
Thank you. So there is a create space that some people might think of as a maker space that would have things like a 3D printer. It would have other equipment like a sewing machine, if you're into sewing, and other things that you can get together with other people who are interested in that sort of thing and make. There's also a plan to upgrade the computer lab into more of a digital creation studio. Right now we have some computers that are kind of in individual kiosk areas, and this would be a space that you could come and learn how to create various things that you might, for example, put up on YouTube or produce as a podcast. So there's a goal to have that in place as well, where the current computer lab is. And then certainly there's expanded collection space for things like DVDs or the playaways that folks like. So both of those things this would have space for.
Yeah, I was wondering, I know about 3D printers, that's rad. I'm wondering about how, like, what you're talking about with the computers.
With the computers, in terms of a digital media lab, that's a computer that's set up so that you can try to make things that other people would look at or listen to yourself. That's what that's for.
Like animations?
Yeah, that's a very good example, like animations. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. Sick.
Thank you, Ezra.
That's a hard act to follow. I did not plan to speak, and so my remarks are probably going to be a little disorganized. One thing I do want to say in response, I have been right on the fence, and it was only because of the cost. There's no question in my mind that the library needs to be renovated, upgraded, more space. And one thing specifically I want to point out is that we're not talking about creating new uses for people. We're talking about meeting the need that they already have. That there's a lot of people that are squished in there, and if you have not, if you're not a user of the library or haven't had kids in the school system at WCS, I think you wouldn't appreciate what they actually do. I moved here 15 years ago. Vermont is very expensive, even before prices go up. Single mom, and my daughter was 4. Williston has been a great community to move into, but it's still very neighborhood-based, and for somebody that doesn't have roots here, building those ties and things are not always that easy. When my daughter landed eventually at WCS, I could not believe what was happening at the library with the kids. And for the gentleman that says, you know, it's right across the street from the school, talk to the school board. Are they going to hire more teachers? It's not their role to take care of kids after school, and they have a great library too. But I think when you look at the programming that the library does, as somebody that lived other places and an older mom, I wasn't here with peers that had kids the same age. It really is, I think somebody had said it at one point, it is like a community center in many ways in terms of bringing community members together. I did have a couple of very specific questions, and I will talk about the cost, because that was the thing that, you know, the red flag for me. But I think I looked at it as a percentage of assessed value, assessed value, as opposed to seeing the actual example of how much $120 a year for a $300,000 assessed house. And then I was like, okay, that's not quite as much as I thought. I do want to say that the comparison in terms of how much the total project costs, as opposed to 5 homes, it's going to house a lot more people than 5 homes, and it's going to be there for a long time. So my questions are, why did you take the parking off of Library Lane? And is that going to still be one way? And then the other question is, you know, from the visuals, it's hard to tell whether it's kept kind of the architectural feeling of, I guess, what is the main entrance that to me looks like the small town.
Yeah, for Library Lane, that will remain one way. We moved the parking there in the design primarily for a safety reason. I think anyone that's pulled in there and tried to back out
yeah,
during
that's true.
school drop-off or more dismissal, not open with that drop-off time, but that's a tricky endeavor. So I think we've ended up having, was it a couple more parking spots overall, how this layout was structured? And then, sorry, your second question, the design aspects?
Yeah,
The entrance of the building?
well, the main entrance will be at a different place, yes.
Yeah.
You're moving the main entrance to across from WCS, is that correct?
Yes, it would
Yeah.
face this way to the north.
Right. And the visual from the statue is very confusing because I guess I've never looked at it that way. To see all that land, I was like, where are they talking about? Anyway, that's an aside. I just wish there were some different visuals to have a better sense of what it is really going to look like. But overall, you know, it's a serious question, and I'm an advocate for the library.
Thank you, and I can answer, you know, the roof lines were a very detailed discussion by the committee, I'll say, to really keep that in tune with the architecture of the village and the green. Kevin? Oh yes, we have a 3D printed model too that shows a scale visual the best we can as well there.
Hi, Charity Clark, Chair of the Library Board. I wanted to address a little bit about the process. The process begins with your elected officials, the Select Board and the Library Board. We were all elected by the people of Williston to do specific jobs for us in collaboration with the Select Board, and they're the ones really in charge, was to survey the town, understand what the town's needs were, and then we spent years devising the plan that we voted on town meeting. So when you have a question, why are there so many community rooms? We have an answer. The town told us through public meetings and surveys, that's what they wanted. All of the details, the roof line, the village vibrancy, the wiggle room, all of these things came from our conversations and surveys, et cetera, with the community who elected us. So that is why we led the way that we did, because we were getting input from the community. And I'll personally say, actually, that was kind of frustrating because it slowed the whole process down. But we got it right because we spent so much time getting that information. One thing that I also wanted to offer, which is mentioned in the FAQs, I believe, on the project, is the risk of voting yes is a risk that we're going to pay the same amount in 5 years and get less of a library. That's what happened. My sister lives in Fairfax, and they voted down their expansion on their school, and they just completed it maybe 6 years later. Same amount of money, no auditorium, no, they missed all these things, and that's just the nature of finance and bonds and inflation, et cetera. So please understand that what you're voting on, there's also a risk. This might not be perfect in your mind, but you're taking a risk that you're not going to end up paying the same amount in 5 years and get less of a library. So I personally feel very confident that this project reflects the community's wishes. And since I have the mic, I want to thank especially Carla Carsons, who has done such amazing work as a volunteer. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, and folks, I know some folks might not want to come up to the microphone. We can certainly pass it around as well after folks who come up, but it's your turn.
Thank you. I'm an advocate of the library. but not this specific plan. And there's a few things that came up tonight that I found a little troubling, is that talking about how you had all this input, and I never knew this was even going on, and neither did a lot of people. So it feels like somebody said, well, the committee and the library, there's this small amount of people that design this, and I was frankly a little surprised that there was just one option. And I think what people want is for reconsideration, which would be more democratic and better for the community, is to reconsider the whole thing, not put fear into people's minds, and come up with some choices that really broaden out what we want in terms of the green, and just starting with maybe renovating the existing library, which frankly looks like nothing's gone on it for 25 years. So that whole library looks exactly the way, it's like frozen in time. So yeah, that's it. I just think a reconsideration would be in the best interest.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dan Boomhauer. First of all, thank you all for being here and coming forward with all the different ideas and all the effort and hours and years that have gone into this so far. I just think this is a great moment for our democratic process, that yes, we came down to not enough votes on the library, the 49, so that it could go forward completely as it stood. And so we're following state law and state precedent and using our town money to come to another elected vote. And I really deeply appreciate all the time and effort that has gone into getting us to this point. I just have some very simple questions, I hope. You said specifically that the bond is not to exceed 13.9 million, nuts and bolts. What happens if there are cost overruns that go beyond the 1.2 million that you have as a cost overrun? An example would Mallett's Bay sewer project has jumped in price by 12 million. South Burlington pedestrian bridge was put up to bid in 2025 for 14.5 million. They only received bids that are estimated to be over 37% of what their estimated price was to be. We know what happened with the hole in Church Street. We also know about the hole up in Newport, where they thought they were going to go ahead with something, and then the money wasn't forthcoming for multiple different reasons. So I'm just concerned about what happens if there are cost overruns and the bids come in over 13.9 million, which are actually two separate questions, but that's my concern.
Sure.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, so we look at that. So the authorization up to what we could borrow as we round out the project budget. We built in a contingency there for those reasons when the bids are opened, and if it's over what we predicted it would be. I think if we got in that situation, we'd have to take a hard look at the project scope and potentially scale it back to work within the budget that's been approved.
Well, I was born here. Like someday, like my forefathers who helped settle this town, I'll probably die here as well. There is a difference in this town that has split the town in two over this library addition. We all believe it's important to have a strong library in the town and a strong community center. Just both together are not the right combination in the place that the town wishes to build the proposed library addition. The historic village is worth saving. No one wishes to live here or move here in the village if it starts looking like Taft Corners. This vote is a fight worth fighting. A mistake was made by the town by first recommending that we take our most sacred spot in the village, the oldest structure, the 1832 old brick church, and allow a multi-billion-dollar corporation, Verizon, to tear off the steeple and add cellular panels. Fortunately, the older and wiser townspeople, we fought, and we had this addition to the roof of the new police station, a much better location than nobody thought of before. The town library is also about money. A total library addition that's costing the town $14.5 million is not money spent wisely. The $550,000 from the town budget should be going towards the new $1.5 million fire engine that's coming up for bond vote next year. That $550,000 could be a large savings to prevent another large capital bond vote that we're going to be coming on to next year. The $13.9 million bond vote with an interest rate of 5% will equal over $20 million over 20 years. It'll be over $1 million a year in payments on this loan. The note is paid off, including interest. The library director has already stated that it'll require more staff, 10% increase in staffing costs. If the library budget passes tomorrow's vote, next year you're going to see the new Catamount Center coming up for a bond vote. This is going to be a large building, going to be for storage, going to be community space, probably going to be $8 to $10 million next year on the new Catamount building they want to build. Town also wishes for an additional community recreational center with a swimming pool and fields and gyms and kitchens and everything else everybody wants. That's going to be over $25 million. So let's keep the community center out of the library in the historic district and place it where it belongs, where we have much more room for parking and open space. Currently, Williston's bond to debt ratio is at a healthy balance of low moderate debt. If the town votes in the library tomorrow, it's going to move the town into the upper end of the high moderate range. This is where future borrowing is going to become more constrained, and long-term planning is going to become more difficult for the town. Williston is already 77% more expensive to live in than the rest of Vermont. This comes at a time where inflation, the war on Iran, and the economy, the prices of gas and everything that we're paying at the grocery stores, $400 or $500 a week for a couple. These are all concerns as well as affordability. How many of you have seen the Bed Bath & Beyond commercial space? How long has that been vacant? The UPS facility is going vacant. The town marketplace had its appraised value drop by over $30 million last year. The Global Foundries space, that dropped from $77 million to $17 million last year. Even Walmart, another large commercial space, had its appraised value drop last year. With the vacant commercial spaces in town taking longer to fill and more of them becoming vacant, what happens to the homeowners taking up the slack of this extra cost? And as Dave mentioned, we've got less people in our schools every year. This is the last year that we're going to see a full school group. After this year, our school enrollment is dropping. Our houses, we're building more and more homes, but what are these homes that we're building? They're smaller homes because it's the elderly that are moving into them. It's older people moving back to Vermont. All the young people are leaving Vermont. I hear it every day at the sugar house up at the farm. People come by and they go, we can't afford to live here anymore. I make over $100,000 a year. I got 2 kids. I can't afford to live here. I got to leave. So what do we want in town here? Well, maybe it's the old people, maybe it's the young people. But there's definitely a divide in the town.
Thank you, and it's a good question about the community center. I'd just like to address that. So as part of the original scoping study for this project, we looked at 2 items here, the library and the community recreation center. What the select board decision made was to move forward with the pathway for this library design on the village green, and also to explore sites in the growth center for the community center. So that work's been continuing. I've been tasked with looking for potential sites for that community center. That work is ongoing, but the decision was made to look at this part of the project first. And it was mentioned in Catamount Community Forest and Catamount Family Outdoor Center. They've been looking to have a building for their for their space there. They certainly need something. That's not a town project. The town owns the land, but the nonprofit is the lead in looking to fundraise for that building. So the town is not looking to ask the public for a bond for that facility in the future. Looking at this library project, looking at a community center further down the road once we figure out a potential site for that over time. Other questions this evening?
My name's Paul. I live in the historic village, and I have paid my share of historic repairs with my slate roof and a number of other things. I didn't vote for a war in Iran. I didn't vote for a 250-foot arch or a swimming pool in the Mall. I will vote for this project because I think if we don't look more progressively as a community, we'll fall further behind. And if you don't already own property in Williston, it's going to become harder and harder. It's attractive to the people who live here. It's attractive for people to come and live here. And I understand the issues around cost. It's a very big number. And every healthy community has to continue to invest in itself. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, last call for questions. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight for our presentation and your questions. As a reminder, you can go to our website, willistonlibraryproject.org. We've assembled several FAQs from questions we've heard from the community these past couple of months. We've had great conversations with the community as we've been from town meeting day leading up to tomorrow's vote. Certainly, however you decide to vote on this, please remember to vote. It's really important. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Armory tomorrow. And thanks again, everyone, for coming out this evening.